I was having y'all, your boy Rico from Street Scores, and man, this is kind of breaking news. I mean, it's not like it's one of our top players, but I think this is pretty bad timing. I at least want to give him a little bit more of a chance. Sam Howell, his ex-teammate back in college at UNC, is finally the starting quarterback, and now apparently the Washington Commanders are shopping wide receiver Dyami Brown in trade talks with other teams. It's been reported that we're the ones being active and aggressive. Like, we're the ones like, hey, do you want to take Dyami Brown for some picks? Do you want Dyami Brown for some picks? Like, it's not like teams are calling us. We're calling them about the situation. And I want to talk about why I can see from their point of view they may be doing this. But I also want to talk about why I don't feel like this is a great idea. And why I, at the very least, want to give them one more season. At the very least, give them Sam Howell as his quarterback rather than Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz to see what he could truly do. You saw what he did when Carson Wentz was the quarterback and we finally decided to use him. Imagine Sam Howell and the chemistry that they have. Even beyond the fact that I think Sam Howell's going to be better than Carson Wentz, just period, even if they didn't have prior chemistry going back to college. So I want to talk about the positives and negatives as to why this may be happening, and also talk about this draft strategy a little bit. It looks like the Commanders are definitely trying to fill up on draft picks. I think it's quite likely that we even trade back. So we're going to talk about why as far as that goes as well. And then also, big announcement, the Commanders have officially released their practice dates. So when everybody reports, when do OTAs start? All of the workouts and things like that, mandatory mini camps. So we have the official announcements for all of that. So I want to take a look at some of those dates and why I'm so excited about a few of them. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Sunday for the Commanders Call In live show, where you as the audience call in and you're a part of the show. You ask whatever question you may have, you give your opinions, all of that. We talk everything Commanders. You can even talk about stuff outside of the Commanders, but of course we talk free agency, draft, film session. I'm working on some more mock drafts and everything leading up to the draft, so make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, man. I'm so excited, and without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so it's been reported that the Commanders are shopping wide receiver Dyami Brown in trade talks. Now, granted, he only caught 5 passes on 14 targets last season, which is atrocious statistically. Like, that's terrible. But before we dive into why I feel like we should keep him for at least one more year, just give him one more year to show what he could do, especially, again, not only with a quarterback that he has chemistry with, but a quarterback that's actually good. Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz, according to advanced statistics, were like ranked in the 30s of quarterbacks that played last year, like worse than other teams' backups. Sam Howell, if you're at the very least an average quarterback, somewhere in the middle, like in the 20s and high teens, maybe we can get a lot out of Dyami Brown and he can realize potential. I mean, of course, he's also one of our better blocking wide receivers. Probably between him and Terry McLaurin, there's a reason why we used to take Jahan Dotson off the field on obvious running plays and bring Dyami Brown in. So he brings something to this team, even if he's not being the deep threat that we hoped he'd be so far. We saw some glimpses of it with Carson Wentz, but again, we're going to dive into all of that after I break down this article. So this is coming from Yard Barker, posted by NFL Analysis Network. The Washington Commanders have done a good job in recent years of building up the skill positions on their offense. While they look to have hit on a few transactions, such as selecting Jahan Dotson in the first round of 2022, there have also been some misses. And remember, I mean, not only just Chris Sims, but some people felt like Dyami Brown was one of the top 3, top 5 receivers coming out of his draft class with Jalen Waddle and all of those guys, and we were lucky to even get him when we got him in the 3rd round with our second 3rd round pick. One of those misses looks to be Dyami Brown. Washington selected him in the 3rd round of the 2021 NFL Draft, number 83 overall. He has appeared in 30 games in 2 seasons, starting 6 of them, catching 17 passes for 308 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brown looks to have some real deep threat ability, as he averaged 18.1 yards per reception in his career. That is something almost every deep could use. I'm assuming they meant every team could use, as a field stretching big play threat is also helpful to keeping an offense humming. However, it doesn't sound like that he will be of use in Washington for much longer. According to a former NFL executive that spoke to NFL Analysis Network, the Commanders are looking to move Brown in a trade. The trade talks are active and will help heat up as we get closer to the 2023 NFL Draft. Quote, there are still quite a few trade possibilities leading up to the NFL Draft. One name to watch is Washington wide receiver Dyami Brown. They're definitely open to moving him and calling teams actively, unquote. A change of scenery would probably do Brown some good, even though, I mean, to retort against that, the change of scenery would be going from Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz to Sam Howell. That's the change of scenery alone. Eric Bieniemy becoming your offensive coordinator rather than Scott Turner, who couldn't even find a way to use Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson in the offense. I can't wait to see not only what all of those guys can do under Eric Bieniemy, but I think Dyami Brown would matter and actually have a true impact on this team, a consistent impact. But yeah, continuing from the article, a change of scenery would probably do Brown some good. He is, at best, the number 4 wide receiver on the depth chart, and I agree, at the very best. He may not even be that, I can admit. On the pecking order for targets, he is even lower down the totem pole. Right now, his tenure with the Commanders may be the most known for drawing the ire of Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. St. Brown was selected in the 4th round of the draft, number 112th overall. He remembers which players were selected ahead of him, and Brown was one of them. Yeah, he has every single one of them memorized, which I'm not mad at. I love that motivation, and I love that trash talk to even bring it up and tell people. When the Lions faced off against the Commanders last season, St. Brown had a big game, winning NFC Offensive Player of the Week. He shrugged off that win, but found time to call out Brown's performance, which was unforgettable. The North Carolina product was on the field for only 1 offensive snap in that game. Again, not his fault, but hey, so again, that article presented why moving Dyami Brown makes sense. I mean, he hasn't been very productive, and even the games he's played, he hasn't received targets. Again, I retort by saying it's not his fault, but at the same time, like, I'm not gonna act like Dyami Brown, we lose him and we just lost this spectacular player. I'm not one of those guys that gets attached to average, mid, or at the very least underperforming, or guys that haven't reached their potential type of guys. Like, I love Samus Reyes, but he's gone. I'm not mad at the Commanders for letting him go. He didn't really do much yet. I still believe he has quite a ceiling to him, but you know, he's gone. I feel like a lot of Commanders fans, and every fan base does this, we get attached to certain players and just keep believing in their potential over and over, year after year. Kind of Cam Sims is one of those guys, and I can admit, if Dyami Brown is gone, he could potentially be one of those guys as well, where I felt I could easily see him going to another team and they finally utilize his skill set and him being a great receiver, because I feel like one underrated part about him is that he can block, which is, again, love Jahan Dotson, easily and by far the better receiver, but there was a reason Dyami Brown was brought in on running plays and Jahan Dotson was taken out. First of all, so Jahan Dotson can get a breather, but Dyami Brown is the better run blocker, and that has its value. But at the end of the day, man, Dyami Brown, if we lose him, it's not like it affects how many games we necessarily win or lose this upcoming season. It's not like our team just goes down the drain. So even as much as I'm gonna defend Dyami Brown in these upcoming minutes, don't think I'm out here screaming at the Commanders to not let him go no matter what. Hey man, it just depends on what draft pick we're talking about. If you can get a really good mid-round draft pick for him, especially if we can somehow, for some crazy reason, get the draft pick back that we spent on him, like a 3rd rounder, then you for sure do that in a heartbeat. In a blink of an eye, you trade that, man. I would love that, but I'm pretty sure those aren't even being offered because he would have already been traded by now, especially with how active it sounds like we are in the situation. I mean, we're being the aggressors again. We're the one calling teams. They're not calling us. We're calling them like, hey, you want Dyami Brown? We got this Dyami Brown for the low if you're trying to see. Hit my line if you need some Dyami Brown, you know what I'm saying? Like, we are not playing about him. They apparently want him gone. Maybe Eric Bieniemy came in and was like, yeah, I can't really do much with this guy, so we might as well find a way to get a draft pick out of it. But I also just feel like the Commanders really want to pick up as many draft picks as possible. This is a pretty deep draft, especially at a lot of different positions, especially corner. Oh my God, this draft cornerback wise is insane as far as the depth goes. And even edge rush rusher, with us potentially struggling to figure out how to pay both Montez Sweat and Chase Young long term, one of them may end up leaving, more than likely will end up leaving. We're going to need a guy to replace them. We may be able to trade Dyami Brown for a late round pick and get their potential replacement late in this draft. You never know. Offensive line, cornerback, all kinds of stuff. This is a very deep draft in several position groups, so I can see why the Commanders may want to trade back, why they may want to go ahead and trade guys that they don't really see a use for anymore. Again, maybe Eric Bieniemy stepped in, they did a consultation, did a whole evaluation of like the entire roster, and was like, I mean, this Dyami Brown guy, I just don't really see it for him like that. I want to get all of these guys the ball. I want to get Antonio Gibson the ball more than he was getting it last year. I want to get Curtis Samuel the ball more than he was getting it last year. Where does this Dyami Brown even fit into that equation? Man, hopefully Eric Bieniemy loves Armani Rogers, and so it's just like, where does Dyami Brown fit into that? And then again, one of the reasons why we don't really miss anything is that, I mean, Dyami Brown, granted, he did have those great plays for Carson Wentz as a deep threat, but we saw it in the preseason, man. He's not this super burner. He's fast, but he's not Deshaun Jackson fast. He's not Terry McLaurin fast even. So it's not like he's out here toasting and burning safeties down the field repeatedly. We saw that in the preseason, that he may have a step on guys, but it's not like he's 3 steps or more. So even though his best trait is being a deep threat, he's not even that much of a deep threat. You got to be really accurate for his deep threat ability to work. It's not like he's 5 yards away from the nearest defender when he does it, like some guys do. He doesn't have that crazy level of speed. So if your best thing is being a deep threat and you're not even elite at that, I can see why the Commanders would feel like he's expendable. And again, especially draft pick wise, if this were like the middle of the season and we weren't concerned about draft picks, I'm pretty sure Dyami Brown wouldn't be getting shopped. This is definitely a draft pick thing. They're definitely higher on the depth at certain positions throughout this NFL draft than they are on Dyami Brown specifically. But again, I feel like, man, at the very least, let him get his quarterback again. I mean, you saw Sam Howell and Dyami Brown doing some workouts just a few days ago, literally a week ago. Today, as in Friday last week, they were throwing the ball just like good old times back in UNC. Sam Howell hitting them perfectly in stride. I mean, you could argue Sam Howell has the best chemistry with him out of any receiver on this roster. And if you want to make things easier for him, transitioning most importantly to a new offense, going from one offense to another, your rookie season to your redshirt freshman season, because he barely played last year, he still feels like a rookie going into this upcoming season, and to have 2 completely different offenses. Think about it: college 1 year, different offense; Scott Turner his rookie season; Eric Bieniemy his redshirt freshman season. Those are 3 different offenses that he's had to learn in 3 years. So at the very least, if you can have at least some sort of a familiar aspect to the offense, and that could be Dyami Brown for him. At the very least, he has chemistry and knows exactly where and when he'll be at every time that he needs him to be there on any given route. He knows exactly where Dyami Brown's going to be, when he's going to be there. Dyami Brown knows exactly how Sam Howell wants him to like indicate that he's making a break on a route. It's like a bunch of little things that Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson are obviously great receivers and obviously better than Dyami Brown, but maybe they don't exactly know those things yet and how to make things more comfortable and easier for Sam Howell just yet. Hopefully they'll gain it, but again, Dyami Brown could be that one source of familiarity for Sam Howell moving into another new offense, his 3rd new offense in 3 years, 5th round pick, and you're throwing all of this new stuff at him, and you're just hoping he can go out there and be a starting quarterback week 1 with Jacoby Brissett breathing down his neck. So man, I mean, I'm not saying Dyami Brown is the end all be all and just gonna fix everything for Sam Howell, but I think it would definitely help. So of course, I agree, you can get a really good pick for him and end up getting a really good player with that draft pick for him, do it. But don't just trade Dyami Brown just because you feel like you can't use him. That's just lazy to me. I feel like there's definitely a way you can utilize a skill set, and at the very least, he's comfort for Sam Howell, and he's a pretty good run blocker. I feel like you could work something. I feel like you could do something with that, and he showed that he can be a deep threat at the NFL level with Carson Wentz throwing them the ball. Imagine what Sam Howell could do. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, the Commanders also announced some really important off-season dates. You have first day April 17, and then you have OTAs May 23rd through the 25th. You have May 30th through June 1st, and then also June 13th. Mark that on your calendars. And then you also have mandatory minicamp in the middle of all of that, June 6th through 8th. Make sure you mark that on your calendars. Make sure you stay tuned for all of that, man. because those are important. I'm really excited. And then, of course, another important off-season date that some of y'all may have forgotten is that the owners meeting is on the 26th, so maybe team sale by then. And then May 1st is the deadline to pick up Chase Young's 5th-year option. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Do you want to keep Dyami Brown, or do you want to go ahead and trade him away? If you're willing to trade him, what pick is the lowest you'd be willing to allow to trade for a Dyami Brown? What's the lowest pick in the draft you'd be willing to give Dyami Brown up for? And then, of course, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, names are scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.